Hello, I'm Troy Flint, Chief Communications Officer for the California School Boards Association, and welcome to the latest installment of CSBA's AI Task Force webinar series. The title of today's webinar is Navigating AI Policy, Privacy, and Procurement, and we have a lot of rich information to share with you today as our partners at California IT and Education, also known as CITE, are going to share some guiding principles as well as checklists, resources, references, and systems that you can use to help guide your evaluation, your policy development, and your successful implementation of artificial intelligence in a TK-12 school setting. We want to get into the heart of the matter, but before we go any further, a few housekeeping details to help you participate in today's webinar. We're going to save the questions until after the presentation has been completed, but you can submit a question at any time using the Q&A icon there that you see highlighted in the red square. And then there are also going to be a couple audience participation sections throughout the presentation and some polls and surveys. And so our panelists will let you know when to take part in those. And so now to introduce our panelists, we're going to move forward with the introductions. And we have Kelly Hilton, who is the Director of Technology for the San Ramon Valley Unified School District and also a CITE certified CTO. And we also have Laurel Nava, who is a Deputy Executive Director at CITE. And they will be leading you through most of today's presentation. And with that, I will hand it over to Laurel.
Great. Thank you so much, Troy. Welcome, everyone. We're excited to explore a new audience for us and help support the board members out there. So who is CITE? Some of you may know us by our old name, which was CETPA, the California EdTech Professionals Association. We rebranded in 2019 to California IT and Education. But we've been around for a long time. We're celebrating our 65th anniversary this year. We started out as the folks who did punch cards in the school districts back in the 1960s. And since then, we are now the folks that continue to support anybody who works with data, but also those who work with cybersecurity, information technology, and supporting instruction to help kids graduate career ready in technology. So today we're going to talk about 5 critical moves for school districts, and these will serve as basically our learning objectives. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kelly.
Thank you so much, Laurel, and thank you to CSBA for having us here today. Laurel and I are excited to share what we think are 5 critical moves for all school districts in moving and navigating this new artificial intelligence space. So an overview of what we'll be talking about today is developing guiding principles, responsible use agreements, instructional technology leadership, student data privacy, and AI literacy. And with that, we're going to be sharing some information that we've curated from other resources, but also I'm going to be sharing the story of our San Ramon Valley Unified School District as well, and how we've navigated some of these changes. Before we start, I'd like to take a deep look into what is AI and how it is really already embedded into many of our everyday tools that we use. So I'd like you to take a moment and just ask yourself about the technology that you used since this morning, since you woke up this morning. And what are some different technologies that you might have used? Perhaps you might have navigated your Siri on a phone to audio text or to Google something on your phone. And a Siri is an AI embedded integrated tool. Perhaps maybe last night you were looking at a Netflix account and it was generating some suggested shows to watch next. And that's because it's curating, it's understanding what your style of shows are, and it's going to make some suggestions. Well, that is an AI embedded tool. You can see AI on your Amazon account when you go shopping and they make suggestions for things for you to shop. Every time we log into our Google Maps and navigate, we're utilizing AI. And Facebook is a big curated AI tool with lots of access to different suggested reels or advertisements or friends because they're looking at the data and connecting it all and making suggestions. And then finally, of course, if you did a workout this morning and you utilized a fitness tracker, this is utilizing AI to improve and enhance our health. So we're seeing AI embedded everywhere. And we're also asking ourselves what it is because it's a very broad definition of AI. But let's talk about what it really does. AI is something that is really training a computer to think like a human. And that's what makes it really different because we're used to telling the computer what we would like it to do. And now we've changed the narrative to training it to think and collect the data and do things as we might. So when you're working with AI, the big thing that's made this different is that you can generate language with AI. So what the AI understands and create and can create a human language. AI can also take, the more you use it, the more enhanced it becomes and it starts to understand the way that you think. So it's a learning tool. The AI gets better over time the more you utilize it and put information into it. It gets better at solving the questions and the problems that you have. So you can put those problems in or a situation and have a dialogue with AI. So that makes it really different than other technologies that we've used in the past. And furthermore, AI can really make decisions. It can weigh out different options and help you choose the best path. It can also do the critical content of looking at multiple points of view. So it, as you can see, it comes to how you use this tool. It can't just be one prompt in and then taking that as the final answer. The tool is has the capabilities to have an in-depth dialogue or in-depth research around various topics. Now, of course, I want to be mindful and forewarn that that comes with being a critical thinker and being aware of biases in the tool as well. But we have been talking about AI in the last several years, and I want to just take it a step back before ChatGPT and just have a conversation this morning a little bit about the evolution of technology and education and what had brought us to where we are now. And partly because in our organizations, and I know for my career, I started in the late 90s, early 2000s as an educator, and I've seen technology evolve over time. And each time we've had to have conversations around literacy with that technology and bias within that technology and well-being in the use of the technology. And those conversations are still being going strong now as we talk about AI as well. In fact, in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was a revolution to introduce the World Wide Web into classrooms because for the first time, we were talking about getting our research and information from the internet instead of from the libraries and the books that many of us grew up utilizing when we were going to school and researching. Next, the classrooms were introduced with things called interactive whiteboards, and that was different than the traditional whiteboard or blackboard because it allowed students and teachers to interact on the interface. In 2007 was the introduction of mobile devices. Many students and families and staff members started having access to mobile smartphones and tablets, mobile technology. While they weren't necessarily in every classroom at that time, that started to impact the conversation around access to technology any time in your day, not just having a desktop computer that you go to when you wanted to work on those your projects. In 2010, cloud computing was introduced, where Google and Microsoft became the leaders in introducing cloud access to workspaces that were taking our work from being in a hard drive to being accessible from any kind of device. And that was pretty revolutionary in 2010. And now in the mid 10s, 2010s to 2020s, we actually have been experiencing the use of artificial intelligence in several of our ed tech companies and products that we use in schools. There's tools called Dreambox and iReady, and these are reading and writing tools that adapt to the student responses and then take them to the next task or skill base based on their responses. So we have been using AI in that way. But the game changer and the thing that really launched this conversation and why we're all here today is in 2022 in November when ChatGPT launched. Now we were talking about the kind of AI that's defined as a large language model. And that means that we can ask it to generate the human language or to generate images or to generate code now. And so that is where educators are really asking ourselves, what does this mean for us? How are we going to change the way we teach and learn, knowing that students have access to this? And of course, the most important question of how to prepare our students for jobs that they will have where they need to have the literacy in order to understand how to use this kind of technology. So, for fun today, I thought it would be fun to kind of start off with a little activity. It's called Real or Fake. And this is, I'm going to take you to a website where you can see some AI generated images. And these images, one is real and one is fake. And this is where the literacy, and this is kind of the why, is so important. Because if you look at these at face value, they look both real. I'm guessing that's what they did for me. But one of these is not an actual, it's an AI generated image. And so let's see what we, when we click on one of them, it will tell us which one it was. So I guessed this one. And it says that you can tell the difference here because there's simple round spots in the top one that was AI generated. It was very calculated. And there's a complex pattern on the frog. Now, when you think about it, this is what we're talking about, what how important it is for our students to understand these things so that they can understand when they're reading and learning and researching online what's real and what is not real. Here's another example of historical events. So if you're watching right now, ask yourself, which one do you think, the top one or the bottom, is potentially real? I'm going to click on the bottom one. And I got it right. It says that they're accurate masks and chimneys. If the top one has inconsistent lighting and incorrect mass, but at first glance, you can't really tell right away. Let's try one more of the category of students doing art projects. Now, it's hard to believe that the computer generated both or one of these images, and when you're looking at people and you're trying to ask yourself which one is real or which one is fake, then you're going to want to be really looking at details around limbs and details in the image. Let's just say, let's try this one. Oh, that one looks real, right? But I got it wrong. And that's going to show us that this one image here has some misplaced hands, and over here they are aligned. So you can see that we're living in a virtual world online where there's just a lot of detail in the work, and teaching our students how to be able to navigate that is definitely at the forefront of everyone's minds. Anyone have guesses here? Let's take a look. This one looks really nice, and the tree leaves are all very defined. This one is not as defined, so I'm going to try that one. Nope, that's not right. The leaves lack detail there, and they're incorrect bank. And over here, the more detailed leaves and the correct bank. So it's just an interesting activity to start thinking about what does this mean for the classroom? And why are we asking ourselves what policies and practices and procedures do we need to put in place? So, with that, I'd like to ask you to take a moment to reflect. I have four more images here on the screen, and they there's no title attached or anything. They're just images. But let me just check in with our viewers today. What image, when you look at all four of them, do you feel clearly represents your current feelings towards AI in education? You can select number one, two, three, or four. And we've put a poll up for you to just kind of tell us why or which one you selected. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just merely a where do you think you might be? And it's an anonymous response. So that's good as well. When I look at all four of them, honestly, I feel like in I've identified with each photo for different reasons at different times during this journey. Certainly have had that conversation of, what does this mean for education? With there's a teacher in the number one with the robot next to it, and I've asked myself, how I don't think we're there yet, but how will I leverage this technology in the classroom? So she kind of has a confused look on her face. Maybe that's when we're questioning how do we do this? I've also had the experience of number two, where the group is happy and they're learning together and they're discovering the new technology and what it offers. And I've had that experience as well. In image number three, the gentleman's reading the article. It says, could this replace the work of educators? I don't think so, but I know there's people that think that. I know that I've been an educator my whole life, and the most important thing about education is connecting with humans and making it meaningful and motivating for them. So we'll see there. And number four really represents to me kind of just doing the research, doing the work, and feeling a little bit confused and trying to figure out and navigate it. So let's see our poll results. How does our audience feel? Ah, I see. Okay. So most people feel connected to the discovery of AI, and we have a pretty balanced range. Thank you all so much for sharing. Now I want to ask you to look at the same four photos, and ask yourself, where do you think your school district is on this journey? Which image might best represent the current attitudes about education and AI in your school district? And what work do you need to do there? So just take a moment to choose one through four there. And I would say I was lucky enough to have an organization who definitely wanted to dive right in. So we are in number two. But I would say that there's different profiles in every organization. So we're having conversations about one, three, and four as well. But at first glance, where do you think your district's at? Let's see what the audience said with the poll there. Oh, about the same place. Okay. But pretty equal across the board. Thank you so much for engaging in that with me. Let's move on to talking about how there is AI already in our systems as well. And Laurel's going to go dive in deep a little bit more on what that looks like.
Great. Thank you so much, Kelly, for that great introduction to AI. So increasingly, AI is being embedded into some of the existing tools that school districts are already using, such as student information systems, enterprise resource planning systems, and more. And on the benefit side, this can really allow our district certificated and classified staff to analyze data, generate suggestions for actions, implement those much more efficiently in the past. One great example of that is I've yet to meet any principal who absolutely enjoys making a master schedule. AI can be really efficient in making some recommendations when you're giving it disparate groups of data and asking it to meet certain goals. On the other hand, all of these AI add-ons that are coming into these systems, they're accessing some of the most critical student data. What we know right now is that an individual student record can be sold on the dark web for over $500 per record, and it's incredibly valuable data because most students under the age of 18 have a clean credit history. So it's incredibly popular for bad actors to want to have that data, and it's our responsibility as districts to maintain the security of that. So some of those new tools, we really recommend embracing them, but embracing them with caution and with education in their use. One example that was shared to me at a different training was somebody who was in charge of our student information systems, and the system employed an AI agent inside of it to make recommendations around student suspensions. But some of those suggestions that the AI were making weren't taking into account the context of the individual students, nor the characteristics of those student groups and their common backgrounds. So on the next slide, this slide was produced with our partners at the California School Information Services, and that is the state agency who helps to implement CalPADS, our statewide student data system. And they came up with a list of all these different systems that they're seeing where AI is already being in use at the school district level. So not every school district has all these systems in there, and not every school district is using a system that has AI enabled. But it's already broad and it's already in here. So some examples that come from this really complicated chart are transportation. It's now popular to use an AI agent to automate bus routes to match employee schedules and student priorities. AI is really good at that. I've seen a demo of a security system that AI will actually look at the entire map of a school facility, note the door locations, note the emergency access locations, and generate plans and guidance for any law enforcement officers who would have to come on during a school incident. And it helps them with scenario planning. Another example is compliance reporting. All of the information that has to go into some of those federal and state compliance reports, it can be accessed across many different data systems. And so AI can help generate those reports by analyzing multiple different data areas and really easily generate those. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kelly, and we've talked a lot about AI, but now we're going to dive into what it actually can look like in a classroom.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Laurel. I just want to note that this slide is very similar to the one that I started in the beginning, in that it's embedded into our tools we use personally, but it's also embedded into the tools we're using as an organization. So very helpful. So with that, we're going to talk about what the school district organization is using. So I ask yourself, what does your school district work use for Gmail or for email or for Outlook? Do you use Microsoft or do you use Google? Both of those are two of the most popular workspace tools available for the cloud computing, as we talked about in that evolution of IT and technology. And both of these are game changers in the sense that beyond the workspace, they are rapidly creating tools that are available for students and staff to use AI in these multitude of ways, the large language model ways that are competing with what ChatGPT first introduced back in 2022. So when you take a look at these two tools, there's something called Gemini, which is built into the workspace for Google. And there's something called Copilot, which is built into the workspace for Microsoft. Now, both of these tools, a user who has an account can go to those and use it in the same way as an open prompting tool as you would have with ChatGPT. But let me show you what that looks like. We're going to take a look at Gemini, and that's because we have Google here in our organization in San Ramon. And Gemini just recently went from just allowing open prompting, kind of like a Google search, to including features such as something called deep research, which I'll show you in the demo, and something called Canvas, which is an open, expansive space to really visually open and engage with AI, and something called GEMS, which is like a learning coach. So you can see that since 2022, where it was just a prompting tool, even these tools have gone beyond just minimal prompting. And Gemini, in particular, recently it was announced that Google has the safeguards in place that allows school districts to turn this tool on for students who are ages 13 and above. So, as the IT director in San Ramon, we've been doing some work with our staff to really do some training on Gemini so that they understand how it works before we turn it on. And we're planning to turn it on in the fall. And that kind of goes with all of the 5 moves that Laurel and I are talking to you about, putting those things in place so that when you're ready as an organization to turn on a tool like this, there's a lot of things that need to be in place before that happens. So this is what Gemini looks like in a premium Google account. And the reason we recommend that our staff use Gemini, we've been training staff, and that doesn't mean just teachers. We've been training paraprofessionals, special education staff, classified staff, all classified staff, and certificated staff, because everybody has access to Gemini in the organization. And also because data is so protected when you use the organizational AI, then that way we can ensure that they're not sharing information that shouldn't be shared outside of our organization. So when you take a look at this, you'll see that there's a prompting box here. The prompting box has a microphone. It has a plus sign where you can pull docs and things from your drive in Google, and you can import them from your drive here, or you can upload from anything that you have on your desktop, or you can import code. And all of these options allow you to customize a prompt. So let me show you an example of what I mean. When you prompt, or when we show students how to prompt, we start with like your own profile and who you are. So we would show them, as a California school board member, what recommendations do you have for my organization in launching an AI task force? And then the prompt will generate a list of ideas for us, and it'll give you phase one. Let's see here, it broke it down into phase one, planning and formation. And then it has phase two, action and implementation, and phase three, monitor and adoption. Now, it's difficult to demo this because every time you prompt, you might get something similar or totally different. It's pulling the data from what Google has. And also, if I wanted to customize it, I could add files here, and I could add from my drive. For example, let's say the slides from here, and I could say, now pull the data from those slides and add that to the prompt. So you can see how powerful this tool is as a research and planning tool. Another thing that's what's nice here is they have this 3 dots here where you can listen. It's very accessible. So when you think about providing access to all students, it's accessible and they can listen to it. You can copy this and paste it somewhere. You can also cite it if you need to. And here you can share it. You can export it to a Google document or draft it in a Gmail and send it to someone. If you don't like the response you got, you would give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So a lot of capabilities here. Another thing that you can do is revise your prompt. And this is something we ask students to do quite often. And so we might say, using the content from the attached slides. What other suggestions do you have for school districts in AI planning? And then it might just generate another prompt for us. So you're just basically having a conversation, and it really does give you information quite quickly back. So you can see how powerful that is. And it's even pulling directly from our slides of the stuff we're going to be talking about today. If you wanted to do a more deep dive, like a deep research project, then you would start a new chat and you can do a deep research on, say, AI and the history of AI or whatever project you're working on. Students now will, when they with access to tools like this, they might do deep research on a topic in this way, but then the work comes in when they go ahead and are reading the research that the tool has given to them, and then they're checking the sources. And what's really great is they can prompt it for if you're doing, like, say, a research on an opinion topic, then you can prompt it for both sides of a topic and see what both sides of the argument might be, and then cite it from there. So all of these tools are really changing the way that we have to do instruction in the classroom. Because I know when I was a student, I had to go back to the library and do card catalog and find the research. The research is available here, and they just need to prompt it and think critically about it now, and then look at how they're going to use that information. And one more thing that I want to show you that this tool offers is something called gems. And gems are where you can generate a conversation, kind of like a learning coach, on any topic that you're interested in or anything that you're working on. So I created a gem here for drafting an AI policy, and it will just give you the steps to drafting the actual policy. So I might ask it, what are the key elements of an AI policy? And then it's going to pull from Google for me. It's going to save my conversation. And then it's also going to prompt me with things to think about and things that I might also consider. So when I get to the bottom here, typically it will share, well, have you thought about this? Do you want this next? So it's like having a conversation with someone, and it cites all the sources from where they pulled the information for you. So as you can see, it's a pretty powerful tool for teaching and learning and for researching, and it can help our all of our staff in the work that they do for planning and implementing and efficiencies, but it can also really help our students as long as we are showing them how to utilize it and we're defining what it means to utilize it ethically and responsibly. So I'm going to ask you one more polling question really quickly. I showed you 4 parts of Gemini in that tool. Which part of that kind of intrigues you? Are you interested in just the open chat prompting? Have you tried that yet? Were you aware of the deep research component? Is that something you might want to explore more? Canvas, where you can really organize ideas visually with AI, or Gems as a learning coach for saving your prompts. So we're going to put the poll back up and give you an opportunity to share your preference. What aspects do you find the most compelling and would you like to explore further? Okay, we'll give it another 5 seconds or so, and then we'll see what the group says. I know, I'm really interested in all of them. What I like about it, the deep research, is I can just kind of marinate in some of the topics that I'm curious about and add to that research base. And it gives me more ideas and things to think about, but I don't always have time for that. So I would say on the day to day, I just use that open new prompting feature. Let's see what the audience says. What do you say is interesting? Deep research. Yeah, excellent. And of course, prompting, Canvas, and GEMS are all popular as well. I could see GEMS being really, really helpful for students, like a tutor, like a one-on-one conversation. Um, you can also use this tool for just getting revision and feedback on the work that you do, or asking for another opinion. And so those sorts of things are really, really helpful in our instructional space. Excellent. Thank you for sharing the poll results. So, how do we get there to where our staff feels comfortable, our students have an understanding, and we feel like as an organization we've created the right structures and systems in place to support everyone? And this is just a visual to kind of talk about the layered approach. It's really it is a layered approach. I think you need to take it one step at a time. And I think the first step is being here and having this conversation, like embracing that AI is here and there's accessible to our students. Maybe not in your district accounts quite yet, but many of our students are accessing it on their own. And so rather than, allow them to continue on their own and not understand parameters around it, let's bring it into the classroom and educate them on how to do it thoughtfully, intentionally, and ethically. So when you embrace it, you're really thinking about leaders in instruction and then all staff as well. And what we did in San Ramon here is kind of designed two pathways for this conversation. And it started with the instructional technology leaders. We invited staff who were interested to become a cohort and have training specifically on understanding AI themselves. And they helped to define our guiding principles. They wrote the principles, which we then shared throughout the organization. And they helped us rewrite the responsible use agreements. And then they also just learned how to teach with this technology so that they could be training other staff members, a train the trainer model. So they had to define it and train others. This included software training, parameters. And then we also, in this last category here with that group, the strategic pilot of software, we started to dabble in tools, but I do caution people to not explore too many ed tech tools because it gets very overwhelming for staff members. So that's why we simplified it in what tools do we already use and have access to, and how can AI enhance learning. And that's what we did when we checked out tools. It was, how are you going to use this to change instruction and improve our learning? And when it comes to the rest of the staff who are not instructors in the classroom, we want them to understand and apply the use of AI. They have access in San Ramon to all three of these large language models: ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, and Google Gemini. And for this conversation, it's just continuous growth and operational efficiency. So coming back to our five critical moves for school districts, I'm going to talk you through how we developed these and went through these five steps. And by all means, we're not completed with these five steps, but it is definitely a continuous conversation. As quickly as the technology is changing, we're having to evolve and train and update as well. But it started with guiding principles, moved to responsible use, developing a really intentional group, a cohort of instructional technology leaders and staff trainers, analyzing our student data privacy policy, and then the AI literacy. So, one of the things that we had in place in San Ramon already before the implementation of AI and before the development of ChatGPT is something called our strategic directions. So, if you have strategic directions in place already in your organization, I recommend using that as the foundation for the AI conversation. At the top of our directions, our priority has been deep learning, innovation, and academic excellence. So, already we were talking about how to take our initiative of deep learning and use AI for deep learning. And then, as you can see in our strategic directions, we have equity and social emotional well being are in the center of it. And at the bottom are our operational foundations, and that is through shared leadership. And so, a conversation that we've had in IT is this is not just an IT initiative. This isn't just a principal or a teacher's initiative. It's not ed services alone. It's everyone in the organization needs to work together to define the use and learn how it works and help our students and staff use it in those ways we talked about. A second thing that we had in place is the learner profile for our school district. And in San Ramon, this is our learner profile that we've developed. And we have 6 competencies that we agree are really important for all staff. I mean, for all students, and this is shared with staff to share with students. As the IT director, I actually utilize the same learner profile for all of the management meetings that we use as well, because we want our staff to also emulate these skills. And I think adaptable learners really comes into play when it comes to learning about AI, as well as critical thinkers, really analyzing the results of the content that is given to you when you use an AI generator and thinking about how it might solve a problem, but critically analyzing it. And that takes intentional collaboration. It takes effective communicating to prompts in the AI. And it also has the potential for our students and staff to be really creative contributors. So we took those 2 things that were in place as our foundation, and we designed our guiding principles, which ended up turning into this illustration here, and they're linked here. We will send those out after this webinar if you want to take a look at our guiding principles. But the first one is that at the foundation of AI is deep learning and innovation, the learner profile. Principle number 3 is that we need to talk about shifting instructional design in order to embrace AI and what that looks like and create a commitment towards that. Principle number 4 is student agency. So allowing our students to be engaged in this conversation and teaching using it for their work and operations, and also understanding how to use it. Principle number 5 is defining the ethical use of AI collectively. And principle number 6 is that this is continuous growth and safety. So we already have policies in place for data and privacy, but that this is going to be an ongoing conversation. So what I'm going to show you really quickly as part of the process is we developed a first iteration of the guiding principles, and we got some feedback after going to committees around the organization. And we realized we needed to broaden the scope of the principles. And so I'm just going to show you a video from one of our committees where you're going to see a student and some parents and an administrator engaging in a small group activity discussing, giving us feedback on the first draft of our guiding principles. Oh, I just heard you weren't able to quite hear the whole video. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure why the audio wasn't working. Well, I will share that out as well. One of the things that the student was talking about is that there's just this balance between broad and specific when it comes to guiding principles. And it makes it, this is a big part of the conversation because people typically want to have clear guidance, but really the way you use AI is driven by the user. So the principles should be robust enough for the users to feel like they can take risks with the AI and define their use of it. But it can't be too specific as well, because otherwise, the way that the AI technology evolves and our creativity evolves, it has to be open enough for that. And that was kind of the dialogue that they were having in this conversation. So all of this kind of leads to this dialogue when you have this conversation and you do the work of developing guiding principles. You're really discussing the potential benefits and risks, and they're both listed here. And when you put this work together, you're asking yourself about creating a space for the whole organization through shared leadership to process the risks and the benefits, and to think about how to use it in this new pedagogy of learning. And that process alone really helps the community move forward before even bringing principals to the school board or AI into the classroom. It really launches the conversation. So what we will share after this webinar is the link that's on this slide as well. I'm going to go there really quickly so that you can see it. This is an organization that developed something that is a toolkit for communities to use in order to build their guiding principles. And they just recently updated it. And San Ramon was able to utilize this as our kind of framework for building our own guiding principles, and that was really helpful as well. Now, when you look at the benefits and the risks, I want you to also pause for a moment and think about that evolution of technology over the last 20 plus years. When we introduced the World Wide Web, when we introduced smartphones, were there benefits and risks? There were. There were benefits, content development. Yes. Assessment design and timely, effective feedback. Yes. Tutoring, personalized learning, aiding creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, agency. Many of the benefits listed here today are the ones that much of our technology has the potential, but it's all in the human development and in the human user. Many of the risks are the same risks that we had when we started with some of the other technology introduced over the last 25 years. Misinformation, perpetuating societal biases, compromised student data privacy, bullying, harassment, diminishment of agency and accountability, and over reliance on technology and less critical thinking. So, as a public education system, we have to keep that human at the heart of our education. But the technology has been developing, and we keep that as our focus. But it really can be done effectively and tentatively if both you understand the technology. So at this time, I'm going to kind of pass it over to Laurel. She's going to talk a little bit more about AI literacy.
Yeah, so what has the statewide response been to AI in education? Last year, Governor Newsom issued an executive order, and he also signed AB 2876 by Assemblymember Berman. And that bill mandated AI literacy to be included in K-12 education. So our next adoption cycles start up this year for math, social science, and so on. And so those are all going to be required to have um, AI literacy, media literacy, and digital citizenship included in those frameworks and those curriculum adoption processes. It defines digital citizenship as a diverse set of skills related to current technology and social media, including the norms of appropriate, responsible, and healthy behavior. It also defines media literacy as the ability to access, evaluate, analyze, and use media and information, and encompasses the foundational skills that lead to digital citizenship. So if we can go to the next slide, a little bit more about that bill. Again, those frameworks and those materials are going to include AI, digital literacy, so on and so forth. But what this really has implications around is staff professional development, both teachers, classified staff, and is the existing curriculum going to be analyzed and modified to include all of these AI components, talking about the ethical awareness of AI. And interestingly, this bill it actually crossed party lines and was co-sponsored by the California Chamber of Commerce. So what we have found is that when we're talking about privacy, internet safety, artificial intelligence, this is an issue that is embraced broadly politically and has had great support in terms of making sure that students are protected as a priority. So what does AI literacy actually define? Then I'm going to turn it back to Kelly to talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you so much. So, AI literacy is defined as knowledge, skills, and attitudes needed to understand AI principles, concepts, and applications, use AI tools responsibly and effectively, recognize limitations, risks, and ethical implementations of AI, think critically about AI's influence on society and daily life. So, this is a lot. I love how it starts with knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Our best asset is ourselves and each other and our community. When AI was first introduced, our school board, our cabinet leader, our superintendent, asked me as the IT director to please spend some time at one of our cabinet meetings to demo and show us and teach us how to utilize a large language model. I think it starts with having the conversation and having uh, the the innovation and the risk type attitude of saying, I don't know how this works. Let's sit together in community and explore it and have conversations and understand it before we judge it. So, creating that space for all of the circles of people in your organization, I think is really, really important. Uh, the time that we've spent discovering together in community of this is very exciting has been so effortless in the sense that we're in the education of teaching and learning. And so it allows our staff to have that space as well. Another group that's really, really important for this is our librarians and media specialists. They have been at the forefront of media literacy for several years, and many of your school librarians and media specialists can be great attributes to defining and training in AI. In fact, since every student typically goes through a classroom library, it's a great place to think about implementing one or two lessons so that systemically all of the students in the organization can have access to learning about it. In San Ramon, we started with our instructional technology leaders, and those were those who wanted to opt in and learn about AI. And they were provided with 5 full days of professional learning so that they can start having these conversations before they went out and trained others. But when it really comes down to understanding AI literacy, you have to have the layered understanding of AI. So it's acquiring basic knowledge of what it can do and how it works. You have to have that before you can use it in a classroom. If once you have that understanding, then you can use it to interact, create, and problem solve. And then, of course, the really valuable and important piece to this is evaluating the output of the AI and critically analyzing it to decide on how the impact of that content is for whatever your purpose is. And this comes to that really minute fine detail of teaching and learning and relationships with students in the classroom, giving them the opportunity to see what an AI generator might produce and then critically analyze it and have those really systemic conversations around evaluating it. So next we're going to move into privacy and process with Laurel.
Right. And first, we're going to watch a quick little video to give you a break from listening to us for a minute.
Hopefully the sound will work. Let me know if it's not.
Yep, no sound. It's
No
probably
sound?
the Zoom settings when we connected. Um,
Okay.
So basically what this video is showing is that when AI, it's a Wild West, and the data that you have is the new gold of the Wild West. So if you think about AI that you've heard about the most, you've probably heard about ChatGPT. We saw the Gemini demo. You might have used Microsoft Copilot in place of Microsoft Office 365. So what we've experienced is that if a district is not embracing the educational license model, um, you're going to get individuals in a school district who are using their own personal accounts, and those can't be monitored in the same way. Those are ones that they're going to set up their own account, and then you have no idea what data might be going into that AI model or not. So one of the things, if you want to move ahead, we're going to talk a little bit about the California National Data Privacy Agreement. Way back in 2015, the state passed AB 1584, and it is the strictest student data privacy law in the nation. We found that districts were overwhelmed by the fact that there were all of these new rules that they had to comply with, but it wasn't so much the district, it was on the vendor. And those vendors have different kinds of T&Cs, terms and conditions. And if you were to actually read every single term and condition that's in use in your school district, there's crazy estimates out there that it would actually take you like 12 years to read all of these pieces and so on. So we worked with the California Department of Education and the State Attorney General, and we created a privacy agreement that can be used by any district when they're in the procurement process. And because we're a nonprofit association and we're made up of IT professionals in the school district, we just put that out there for free. You can also see the fact that we have done extensive privacy negotiations with different vendors. And so that website I have up there, CITE.org, recently completed agreements. You're welcome to go there at any time. It's a public resource. You can see who we're negotiating with right now, who's declined to sign, and mostly the biggest categories, of course, are incompleted or completed agreements. And basically, this is one of the first steps when your district is getting ready, the staff are getting ready to purchase something. Even a teacher can go to this website and see, have they already signed somewhere with some district in the state to say that they're complying with our student data privacy laws. For the past 3 years, we've been working on adding an AI addendum. And so on the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So this AI addendum, we worked with our legal partner to be sure that we're complying with laws, and it's now being used in 27 states now, the California agreement, which is why we renamed it the National Agreement. But really around AI, it's about a 3 or 4 page addendum, and it's asking what data is collected, how is the data used, who actually owns it, how is it disposed, is the data mined, is it used for something else, is it, it's not supposed to be sold or shared, but is it being used for that, and is the actual data that is being input the product? So when we talk about types of AI used, we ask them to clarify, is this an intelligent tutoring system, or is this a machine-based recommendation system? Is this a virtual assistant that's being used in there? Is there a chatbot being used? And then in terms of purpose of AI, we're also asking them to say, what is the AI doing here? Is it personalizing learning? Is it identifying gaps? Is it supporting parent engagement, special education? And really, we're putting this on the vendor to say that if you're going to comply with our laws, you need to be saying this. And then finally, we ask what student data is being collected with the use of AI. So Are they asking for the name, the date of birth, any ID numbers, demographic information, academic records, health information, biometric data, fingerprints, all of that kind of information? And if a vendor is not willing to say that, then that really puts a big question mark over that product. So again, visit that former website anytime to see. And when the district is going through the actual purchasing process, on the next slide, we have a handy little flow chart. And all of this information, by the way, we have it in a PDF guide, our AI guide, and this will go out after. So if you're looking at this and you're trying to take a screenshot of the slide, don't worry, even this flow chart is in there. So the first question in the purchasing process is to ask, is it open or closed generative AI? And Kelly, I don't know that we really dived into that definition a little bit. So basically open or closed generative AI, some AI models have put basically their code out there and said, anything that's out there, we can grab, we can collectively pull it together and it will build a better AI model. Closed AI models are ones in which you don't have those outside influences. It's generating based on its own system. And so it's internal. Do I have that right, Kelly? Because you're
Absolutely.
the CTO. Clarify.
Yes, very good.
Great. So if it's already closed, you can just use the regular data privacy agreement. If it's open, the next question is there a privacy setting that can close it? And if yes, you can still use the regular one. If no, you're also going to need a separate parental consent in addition to the regular national data privacy agreement. So these are great questions as a board member and you're reviewing and you're getting recommendations. You can consider asking, is it open or closed? Is there privacy settings? Do we need to be instructing staff to get parental consent? With that, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about AI policies and how important it is those are to building your AI culture. So the purpose of policies, some of the elements in there are to both use in the classroom, be part of the district review process, and should be looking at academic integrity and now those legally mandated requirements for digital citizenship. We're also talking again with protecting data about cybersecurity as well and alignment with all our state and federal laws. So that resource that that our communications team pushed out and will also be in the follow-up is a editable copy of our AI guide. And we've again worked with the legal teams, F3, to create these policies. And you're welcome to go ahead and take them back to your district and use them right away, share broadly, freely. So on the next page, you'll see one of the sample policies, and this is basically a district-wide policy on the use of artificial intelligence. So again, take this as your starting point. And to go back to what Kelly was saying, how does this align with your strategic priorities? How does this language need to be adjusted? But we've been getting this request for months that we just want a copy of a policy. We want a place to start, and this is your place to start. Next, there's different categories of acceptable use policies here, and you'll see a sample in there for an employee AUP, acceptable use policy. Again, this is a little bit in the weeds for those who are board members in the audience, but if you hear that somebody's looking for one, again, we have this freely in the guide. So this is really saying that your employees are going to identify how AI is going to be used. They're going to agree to comply with all the responsible use and professional standards. They're going to agree to keep that data secure. They're not going to put student ID numbers in any kind of Microsoft Copilot system or anything like that. And it's also going to allow the district to set when it can be used and when it can't be used. And Kelly, I know you've implemented some AUPs in your district.
We have. And we started with that group of, we did that after the guiding principles. And then we also started around shifting the language. We changed the language a little bit to responsible use intentionally. They used to be AUPs for us, but we wanted it to be more collective in building that like positive digital citizenship around the use of technology.
Right. And similarly, I think one of the biggest concerns that I've been hearing about AI in the field is, are students going to use it to cheat? How do we prevent students using it to cheat? So on the next slide, we also include a sample of a student acceptable use policy. But again, it's much bigger and broader and more education than just having students sign a form. And any concerns that you have about a student possibly cheating with AI are in large part no different than cheating with a different form of technology, or cheating with paper. I just was watching some old comedy shows from the 80s where, students had crib sheets inside their shoe, or in other places. So, again, how they access that and how they use it, it's much more on the responsibility to educate them and have them agree to what is acceptable use and not. For example, Kelly just recently graduated from our CTO mentor program, and our steering committee was discussing how do we have our own professional level students going through this program? What if they use AI in some of their assignments? And so we actually put it out as a challenge this year. We want those students to actually write and think about it and come up with the AI guidance, because who knows better than students to come and say, this is what we find acceptable and not. So we don't recommend over policing and over shutting down AI, because again, it's going to be there no matter what. It's all about educating and how they use it. And Kelly, what have you called your AUPs for students? Have they changed title?
So they changed title, but I love what you're talking about, Laurel, because this is just a conversation I recently had with our librarian group. I went to their meeting and they were saying, look, we've done all this work around AI, and many of them are helped me write the responsible use agreements and the guiding principles. And they're really forward thinking educators already in this work. But even this group was asking, well, we need more parameters around this. It opened, I'm glad they said that, but the dialogue is so challenging because you can't you can't define every use of AI. So what I shared with them and what we agreed upon is when it comes to responsible use, it comes down to what is the task you're asking them to do. And when it comes to instruction in the classroom, you have to ask yourself, what are you asking them to do? And then have that conversation with each assignment almost. What is the acceptable use for this task, if you will? And so, what I have here that I'm sharing with you all is some of what led to that for our group. Our instructional leaders spent 2 years with us the last 2 years, and we're going to be reimagining it again. And what I've linked here is our MOU with our union, where we really define what does that cohort look like, what is the time they're spending on learning and understanding AI, and then what are they doing with what they've learned. For the last 2 years, they've been asked to come and learn, and then design professional development for others in the organization and lead professional development. And then we've been able to grant them a stipend for that work. Within that work, we've seen incredible creativity come out, starting with, one middle school teacher was brave enough to say, I would like to do for my professional development a parent night on AI. And so he hosted that at the middle school. And then we invited him to host one for the whole school district. So we just sort of were able to leverage our leaders when we created this defined cohort. Another positive outcome was this cohort went ahead and trained on our all district staff development day. We did a choice-based training, and we had something like 15 sessions that were led by this group of educators. And they had sessions that were really set up more through the teacher lens of using AI for guided research in a social studies high school classroom. Like, how do you do that? And then they were just sharing their own stories. So, just creating that space for them has been really helpful. But when it comes to our responsible use, we also found that this graphic that I have shown here on the screen was one of the most impactful graphics that we got from a website called AI for Education, because it's really about the conversation that you have with your students in the beginning of the task that you're asking them to do. So the question is, why do you want to use a chatbot first? What are you wanting to accomplish? Okay, I want to get started on an assignment. I need some prompting. I want to improve what I already did. Sometimes kids will write what they've already written and then put it in, or explain the idea in simpler terms and in a different way. Those are all excellent ways of utilizing it. But I don't want to use it if I'm just going to have copy and paste for an assignment, or if AI is doing the work for you and you're missing the learning. Try another approach. AI chatbots often hallucinate when doing this type of research. So, like, go deeper in what is happening with the output that you get, and how can I help with my research and find facts, quotes, and resources. So this tool is just an example of a conversation that a staff member could have with their students before launching into the conversation or the task. But something that we also dove deep into was something that Laurel, you just brought up, which is plagiarism. And there's a lot of ed tech tools and software that are promising to teachers that they can go ahead and read a document that a student turns in and check it for plagiarism, and then like identify it for that. And in our responsible use agreements and in our guiding principles, we had to take a stand and say that we are not utilizing those for plagiarism checks, because there isn't one that we are aware of that is always true. So that is something that we want to make sure that we are protecting our students and our staff with, and we're really embedding that conversation in the academic integrity more.
And that
instead.
completely, I've put my own writing in there that I know I wrote, and it's come back saying that it was 90% AI. So
Right.
completely agree with that.
I caution anybody, and it's just for the safety of our kids too. Have the conversations before the assignments and set the parameters, which is what good instructors do all the time anyways. So
Right, and here we just wanted to again call out the excellent work that CSBA has done over the past 2 years with their AI task force. One of the first questions that our members would come is, well, if the word policy is in there, what does CSBA have on AI policies? And so what the approach that CSBA has taken and why they're such a great partner to work with is similar to our philosophy, is that if we try and craft anything that is way too AI specific in 2 years, that technology can change and look very different. And then you're having to modify your policies. So again, the top QR code is where CSBA has gathered together all of the different board policies that touch upon technology, academic honesty, and so on. So those are quick reference there if you're looking to see if those have been adopted locally. And then the second QR code is just some promising practice examples that this is a collaborative document that increasingly grows. And it's like listening to what Kelly has been sharing, but just across many districts across the state. So you're welcome to add to that one as well. We have just a little bit more that we wanted to talk about with the guide. Again, some pieces that might be a little too in the weeds, but we also, as part of this guide, have a technical checklist for AI that is intended for IT teams. It's shown on the next slide. And one of the first questions that we ask on here is, has your local board adopted any policy, any ARs, administrative regulations, anything that is already guiding around AI? That's really where it starts. What do you want to do with the AI, and is the district on board as a whole? The next slide just gives some examples of the type of procurement and use questions that are in there. So, does the terms of service meet all of our data privacy requirements? Have they reviewed existing tools to be sure that anything new has been covered by prior approvals and data agreements? And does it support API integrations, which is really the language that one system uses to talk to another system? So this is a great resource. And then some other state resources that are out there. The state has spent a good year plus coming out with a resource kit around AI. And I wish this was just a PDF to show you, but it's actually so much better than a PDF, because really it's a set of over 24 videos that really dives into some detail around AI. So anything that you're listening to and you're intrigued by today, like open and closed systems, hallucinations, bias, and so on. Those videos actually really give you a good grounding in those AI features. So especially on prompting, you saw Kelly's examples of prompts, and anybody who's played with AI tools, you know that what you're going to get back from the AI is only as good as what you put into it. So we decided to test a prompt. If we put it into ChatGPT, what should you do next after attending this webinar? And it's really kind of gratifying and interesting to see what the AI comes back with. So really, it kind of maps on almost exactly to what we've been talking about: assessing district needs and goals, evaluating privacy concerns, engaging your stakeholders, piloting a project, and developing the training and support needed for implementation. So with that, that concludes most of our content today, and we now are going to move into the Q&A portion. So what questions do you have remaining that we haven't covered, or you wanted to go into something more depth? Please go ahead and use the Q&A function, and we'll try to answer those live.
And while we wait for the Q&A section to populate, I'll just mention that we do send out an email with the recording of this webinar, as well as the deck that the panelists use. That goes to everyone who registered. So those who may not have been able to actually watch today's webinar live, but who signed up for the webinar, will be able to get those resources and use those in their local schools.
Thank you.
And the panelists were very good about answering questions directly in the Q&A section as we went along. So it's possible there may be no further questions, but the floor is open if anyone wants to submit one. So there may not be any more questions, but before we sign off, Laurel, if you wanted to talk a little bit more about how people can leverage CITE to help their technology efforts in their local educational agencies, why don't you do that before we sign off?
Oh, here's a good question that just actually popped in before we get there. So somebody at Cabinet this morning, our PIO asked if using GPT is PRA-able. And so that's a public records request access piece. And Kelly, I don't know if you have any insight on that. What I can say is that right now, the Technology Steering Committee of the California County Superintendents, which is made up of the county level CTOs across the state, this has been a really big live issue. And we actually got an opinion from our legal partner on PRA requests, and we're going to be putting out more guidance around how to handle PRAs in the near future. So I'm afraid, not being a lawyer myself, I don't want to answer that definitively right now. But I will make sure that what gets added to that packet is the opinion that we got as well on that. So Kelly, have you encountered that at all?
I haven't encountered it yet, but I'm glad you brought that up because one of the Q&As that we had was around the access in San Ramon when I mentioned that our staff are able to go to ChatGPT and Copilot and Gemini. And I just want to talk about that a bit because ChatGPT was just the first one that was introduced. And of course, it was free when it started. And we used that to learn and teach others about large language models. But now we've learned so much more around the privacy with it. So we rarely recommend ChatGPT to our staff. We try to really and so we don't have premium accounts for staff members unless they purchase them on their own. And it's just available for use. But what we've had to kind of do is retrain everyone and encourage them to use Gemini instead, because the data privacy and the data in Gemini is more protected. And I believe if there were a public records request, we would be able to pull more history from it and have some conversations around that if needed. But again, I'm not a lawyer in that, but I just wanted to clarify that I think this just shows you how quickly that things are changing because we started with ChatGPT, this is what it does. And then we quickly learned, well, make sure you know what it does, but also don't put anything in there that student information. And that goes for Gemini as well and Copilot, but it's more protected in there because we have premium workspace access.
Yes, also not an attorney. And I would just add that I think the general rule is when you lack certainty, you should just assume that if you're operating in your district role or your county office of education role, you're using district hardware or software, or even if you're using your own personal devices or communications channels to conduct business on behalf of your school district or county office of education, it's likely going to be subject to a PRA request unless it falls into a certain restricted category, and those are pretty narrow. So most of the time, anything you're doing in your school role, you should assume, unless you know for sure otherwise, could be subject to a PRA.
Thank you, Troy. So a little bit more about CITE and what we do. Again, we're a nonprofit membership association, very much like CSBA. We offer education programs for people at all levels of technology experience. So we have a CTO program, we have a program for technology managers, and a certification program for those who are considering coming into the technician level as well. And a lot of other academies around technology procurement, CompTIA A+ exam, cybersecurity, Wi-Fi. We also offer privacy services, which is a really great growing service where all of those recently completed agreements that you saw on the website, those are our districts that have signed up for us, and we will negotiate with those vendors on your behalf. And it's incredibly low cost. It's a technical assistance. So we don't make any profit from it. But I highly recommend checking it out. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the amount of software and the number of agreements that you have, we can help you manage all of those and negotiate on your behalf. Our regional groups can be attended by absolutely anybody, technology or not. We often get a lot of CBOs and superintendents even who will show up to those. And then we have a large annual conference that rotates between Sacramento and SoCal, always around the time of Thanksgiving, right before the CSBA conference. So with that, we have some really cutting edge speakers, as well as a giant expo show and a student showcase. If we're local and you have any students that are doing great technology projects, they can come demonstrate them at our conference as well. So thank you so much for giving us some time to share a bit more about CITE.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Laurel. I'm sure our audience appreciates all the information you have to share. I know I do. And again, the contact information is right there if you want to follow up with questions with Kelly or with Laurel. Also want to refer people to the AI Task Force webpage on the CSBA website, which has a lot of resources as well. We're going to continue to put out more information related to AI. Obviously, it's a rapidly evolving technology, and so we're going to do our best to keep pace. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.